and then we'll go to Michelle, then Joy, that middle row there. So, Abby, um, tell us about yourself politically, what you're about.
Alrighty. Again, like I said, my name is Abby. I am pretty much passionate about everything. The biggest things with me are getting rid of capitalism, getting rid of the US empire, like dismantling the military industrial complex, socialized medicine, and climate justice.
Awesome. Love all of those. Love all of those.
Mm.
Now let's go to right below me, Michelle. What is your political background?
Hi, everybody. I am a Green Party leader within my county. I'm also a delegate at the state level. I'm very active with through my nonprofit work as well as my advocacy and activism around disability, as well as also amplifying the voices that are not heard and or not represented. So that's an ongoing process that I try to maintain. So I stay pretty busy.
Awesome. And next we have who everybody should already know, uh, Savage Joy. How you doing, Savage Joy? Can you tell? I mean, everybody already knows you, but for those few people who don't, just give a couple of tidbits about you politically. What do you believe? Who are you politically?
I have done a show for 4.5 years on YouTube, now on Rockfin as well. Savage joined the Unruly Hour. I'm an organizer, an activist. I am probably most passionate about Medicare for all. But like Abby said, I'm pretty much passionate about everything. So, like, give me a topic, and I'm like, yes, let's go.
Right on, right on. And that's what we need because there are many topics that this empire, or many issues, I should say, that we have to address. So, thank you, Savage Joy. Now let's go beside me, London. Tell us about you politically.
Hi, it's actually pronounced Luden.
Luden, sorry.
It's all right. I'm a college student at the moment studying journalism. I'm also a co-host on the new show on the PBN network, Professional Laughs. And I'm also a Green Party member, so most of my issues that I'm passionate about are usually on the left.
Absolutely.
So like healthcare, climate justice, all those things.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir. All right, and we're gonna go to Novi now. Novi's been with us for a while, but there might be a few people that may not know who you are, Novi. So, can you kind of tell us about yourself politically?
Communist. And do I need to say that again?
No, go ahead. There was a short delay. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah, I'm your friendly disabled communist. I have been left-leaning ever since I was quite younger. Like Abby and Savage, I'm pretty passionate about just about everything, but my major things are the environmental justice, because if we don't work on the environment, it doesn't matter anything else because we'll all die anyways. Also dismantling capitalism, and to that end getting socialized medicine and dismantling our criminal justice system. I am a researcher and grad student in addition to working full-time. I'm actually working on a publication right now talking about how to revamp our public libraries to make them community-based centers for knowledge and to help permit change in the community in which they are in.
Absolutely. Thank you, Novi. And we're going to go right towards the bottom. If you see right down the center there, we have Ben. How are you doing, Ben?
Hey, I'm good. I'm Ben, or Bubble. I'm an activist and organizer in Dallas, Texas. My main focuses are on confronting the rising fascism, especially in my area, and in building dual power. My worldview is that the empire is crumbling, and we have to start building the new world now.
Right, absolutely. And dual power is something very, very interesting. That's something we were just actually talking about. I forget which, it might have been the roundtable on Monday, but we briefly talked about that concept. But absolutely. So thank you for that. And thank you for all the guests who are here for tonight's panel. And the topic was chosen by the panel, and the topic is, or the main topic. Now, I got to be honest with you, this is going to be a topic that I feel a lot of people have a lot to say. So, this may be the only topic we're able to cover tonight. So, but the main topic is Kyle Rittenhouse. I think that's how you say it, or Rittenhouse. And what's
So
happening?
trigger warning too, just for anyone watching. No pun intended.
Right, right. No, that is because we're going to be talking about what's happening in his case and just some of the latest, what's going on and is so shocking. So let me share my screen here. What is this one? Okay, so I'm going to share my screen and show you the video of the actual judge. So the judge in the case made a ruling. Actually, I don't know which one it is. So I'm going to start with this one. See? Not that one. So the judge in the case, actually, how about I just do this here instead of switching it?
Is a racist asshole.
Right? Who has been like, what is it? I saw something, he's been around since like 1983, and I'm like, dude,
are they serious?
You've been doing this? Yes.
Yeah, he has a history of doing this same.
Yeah, he's like,
yeah,
he has one of the worst track records in the country.
Okay, so now finally got the video to open. This one, I'm just gonna give credit to the sad truth, the very definition of white privilege in America, in the American justice system. The prosecution in the Kyle Rittenhouse case is not allowed to use the word victims, but the defense is allowed to call them terrorists, looters, and rioters. So this is the video I wanted to show you. This is the actual judge actually, forming the words to say this nonsense. So let's play that. Let's play this video, and then we'll talk about it on the other side. Oh, actually, hang on a second here. There we go.
The word victim is a loaded word. And I think alleged victim is a cousin to it. Let the evidence show what the evidence shows, and if the evidence shows that any or more than one of these people were engaging in arson, rioting, or looting, then I'm not going to tell the defense they can't call them that. The word victim is a loaded
That's just amazing to me. Amazing to me that
bastard's going to be found innocent, isn't he?
Yeah, and I think this is why some people, some conservatives, some people that's backing this person are so sure. They're like, this is not going to happen the way you guys think it's going to happen, okay? Because they know about this judge. They know what's going to happen here. The victims are now the criminals. It sounds like what he's describing. I mean, literally, because if you're able to call them a rioter and you're able to call Kyle by his name, just grammatically, you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Grammatically, that means he is a victim in that sentence. So it's just, I think it's absurd. But let me go around and just get everybody's initial reaction. I know we all have a lot to say, but I'm going to start in that middle row again. I'll start with Abby, then Michelle, then Joy. But, just your gut reaction to, I don't know if this is the first time any of you have seen this, but your gut reaction of actually seeing what this judge has ruled or said. So let's start with Abby. What are your thoughts?
So my initial gut reaction was, ew, gross. Because I agree. Like, I feel like this judge is doing a lot of times what the media do. So whenever, this protest, like, what was this protest? This protest was predominantly Black and brown people taking a stand against state violence, right? And so, like, to call them, especially the two men that Kyle Rittenhouse killed and the one that he injured. So I feel like to call them rioters, arsonists, looters, like they're being cast as the bad guys. And it's just like, and I feel like the media do this too, because it's like coded language for like painting the protesters who are taking a stand against their own oppression, like casting them as the villains. And then apparently, like this is just like, oh, poor Kyle Rittenhouse. We wouldn't want to be unfair to him. And like another thought I had was, I would love to see transcripts of when this guy has presided over trials of defendants who were not white. Does he coddle them the way he's coddling Kyle Rittenhouse? And I'm sure everyone here, I'm sure all of our guts say no. And it's just funny because I read an article and it said, this is from Market Watch, it said, quote, Rittenhouse, 18, of Antioch, Illinois, was among a number of people who responded to calls on social media to take up arms and come to Kenosha to respond to the protests, unquote. And to me, that says, oh, okay, so show up with your weapons and intimidate and threaten and harass people who are standing up against police violence. That's what that said to me. And another thing that's interesting is the guy that he shot who survived is filing a lawsuit. And all the defendants in the lawsuit, City of Kenosha, Kenosha County, Kenosha Police, and Kenosha County Sheriff's Department. And there was an article from NBC that took this straight from the lawsuit, and it said, like, so basically the point of his lawsuit is that the police, by coddling all these armed white people, like who were responding to the protest,
Negligence, yeah.
yeah, that they enabled Kyle Rittenhouse. So this says, quote, defendants invited, deputized, authorized, conspired with, and ratified the actions of Rittenhouse, a child illegally in possession of an assault rifle, who roamed the street in violation of an emergency curfew order, threatening protesters with his weapon of war, and shooting innocent civilians, killing 2, seriously injuring a 3rd, and narrowly missing a 4th. And so, like you said, his claims are like how, the police basically enabled him. And I feel like that this lawsuit is especially that particular point, highlights how the cops are helping to perpetuate white supremacy. Because you tell the protesters, everybody go home, we got a curfew. But you tell these white people who are armed that they don't have to go by the curfew. And I'm like, that's why I was like, okay, hold on, And I'm like, another thing that really stood out to me was one of the victims, Anthony Huber, all he had was a skateboard. And he hit Kyle Rittenhouse with the skateboard. So that guy was completely unarmed, only had a skateboard. Joseph Rosenbaum, the other victim, was also unarmed. And then the guy that survived, who was just injured, he had a handgun, but he had his hands up. So it's like his defense is claiming this is self-defense. But I'm like, how do you come at and kill 2 people who are unarmed and that's self-defense? Like, I call so much bullshit, you guys. Like, yeah.
Yeah.
That's my take.
But you can see how the state is sanctioning violence. White supremacy violence. You can see how the state is fine with it. Can show up. If you think a person of color could have gotten within 2 football fields with a gun,
Oh my
you're
God.
sadly mistaken out like that. There's no way they would even have made it that close. If they even made it alive, walking around with a gun. Like, it's just, it's preposterous. But let's go to Michelle. You know, what was your same question, like your gut reaction to this news about, in particular, about not being able to call the victims?
So I wonder in what situations a court has actually controlled language. Because if somebody is shot and killed by another person, regardless of who did it, are they not a victim?
Right.
Yeah.
So why is the judge saying we must not say they're victims? Because, and it boils down to the whole sentiment of boys will be boys, boys will have guns, boys will have their toys, and it's socially accepted to allow these things to happen. So with that, it's like, oh, they're just being young, so let's excuse them. You know, there's a person that raped somebody on a college campus close to me, and he got a slap on the wrist. Whereas if he had been black or brown, he would have gone to jail for life, you know, or a long time. And it would have destroyed, he would have been registered on the sex offender registry. He would have done a whole lot of other things. But if you're shot and killed in any situation, even if you have a bruise, I mean, police make us victims all the time, not necessarily me, but make people victims all the time. You know, I mean, I've been profiled with other people because of my activism, but it's like, I still know I have my white skin privilege that puts me in a different category. You know, or puts me in a different level of privilege that impacts all of that. But, you know, like you said, a person of color carrying that assault weapon would have been killed by the cops quicker than quick. They would have not gone after the other people. They would have actually taken down that person. The other variable in this, though, is the position of property. Kyle Rittenhouse was allegedly protecting property, cars and other things, based on a couple of sources that I saw. And in the state's eyes, in the police eyes, it's okay to protect our property. It's not okay to protect our people, which is a problem. And that's a failure of the US systems. So it just goes on. And it goes back to the white supremacy that's baked into every single thing that we do.
Oh, yeah, that is true. So like when people say, you know, why are you always white supremacy? It is everything, and I'm like, that's because it all roads leads back to that. That's why. It's because that's the reason why. But let's go to Savage Joy. What do you believe, or what was your, you know, gut reaction to the video, if this is the first time you've seen it, or if you've, you know, seen it before, and just your thoughts on what's happening here?
So I actually saw it earlier today, and I watched the full length of it, and I had to take notes because I was fuming, and I was like, I don't want to forget anything that they said because it's just so egregious. So first of all, yeah, I mean, some people may think, okay, it's semantics to not be able to call them victims. It actually, as someone who's watched like a bajillion hours of true crime, that makes a huge difference. And it's just like the word innocent. Like when you know, when we're doing a murder trial, and that doesn't mean we think their entire lives are innocent, like they're just pure people. It means they're innocent of what they are being accused of. Well, it's the same thing. Kyle does not dispute the fact that he shot these men. He admits it. So therefore they are victims of that shooting. Period. It should be allowed. As far as, you know, being able to say looting and rioting, that is racist as hell. And we all know that because we watched all the footage. We didn't see a single white person being shown doing anything like that. Were there some? Likely, but that's not what the news is going to show. So then you have people on the jury like, well, all I've seen are the black people looting and stuff. So they already have this in their head. So now they're like, okay, looters, rioters. Yeah, I have this picture in my head. Also, Kyle made the statement that it was self-defense in the respect that he was worried because he saw buildings going on fire and stuff. What does that have to do with him? Nothing. The one of the And as I said, made a comment earlier, this judge does have decades of reports on doing this as to not letting Black people be addressed as victims. He has done this in countless cases, and they're all coming out now since he made this statement. Let's see. Okay, so here's what's scary about this case, and this happens a lot. The jury needs to be 12-0. It needs to be 100%, like unanimous. The scary thing about that also is Kyle cannot be tried again by law. That would be a double jeopardy, meaning we have one chance to put away this racist, one chance. And taking away the ability to call these people victims and to be able to coddle him by his name and things like that, that is going to make a huge impact. And it's scary because if it has to be 12-0 and they're, doing this, I hope not, but he may very well get away with it. And then the other thing was, okay, this really set me off. He said in the longer version of the video, the judge said he will be allowing the police who were there to testify how Kyle went up to several of them and said, "Thanks for the great job you're doing." So the judge thinks that should be admitted because Kyle was giving props to the police that were there. Which white supremacists always gives props to the police. What does that freaking matter? But they're literally going to let these policemen testify that Kyle was appreciative of them. So that could really hurt the case right there. And I think I had one more. No, I think that's all I had. Oh, and then the last thing I had was, these victims who are in fact victims, they cannot defend themselves. So while, he's dancing around the fact that how fragile Kyle is, the fact of the matter is 2 men lost their lives. And when you're trying to label them as looters, rioters, things like this, you're not giving them the opportunity to say, hey, the reason we were there is because we're sick of you killing unarmed Black men. And now it just happened to us as well. And you're putting the victim on trial again. So yeah, there's just so much racism in everything this judge is doing.
Absolutely, Savage Joy. And I can't remember the tweet, but it was in a comment. I was talking with somebody in one of my tweets, and I was explaining to them how if you're standing in solidarity with people of color, and in this case, the two victims that were killed are white, you're going to be treated like the people who you're standing in solidarity with. I can't remember the famous people who, not famous, but the case of the men who got killed in the 1960s. And it was some protesters that were driving somewhere, and there was 2 white men and a Black guy, and they got murdered. When I remember the case, you all will say, oh, yeah. I can't think of the name right now.
It happened in Mississippi.
That's it.
For people to vote.
Yes. You're going to be, they treated them just like the Black victim because you're trying to help them in their eyes. That's in a racist person's eyes and an overseer's eyes. You're trying to help them. So that means you're a race traitor. You're with them. So you will see the same fate that they will. And that's how these victims are being treated. And I think when Joy brings up the point that he has a history of not allowing Black victims to be called Black victims, this is what I'm saying. They're white, but it's the same thing. You're a race traitor. So you're Black. You want to be with them. You're with them. So yeah, I just wanted to interject that part because this is a clown show already to me. I guess it's a clown show. Just from that one video, I'm like, Oh, come on. Like this is a clown show. And the thing is, as all of us are shaking our heads that this is a clown show, there's people watching that saying justice is happening.
Yep.
There's people saying that, believe it or not. There's people saying that. It's amazing to me, but there's people saying that. So let's finish off the panel and just get gut reactions. Let's go to Ben, and then we'll go to Luden. Ben, what are your initial thoughts about about this whole situation with Kyle Rittenhouse?
So I heard that quote on paper before, but I didn't actually hear the judge speak. And hearing him say those words just filled me with such rage and sadness, because, that could have been me that was killed. That could have been my comrades, my friends. In Dallas, we marched for 100 nights straight, and we had cars charge us. We had guns pulled on us. And just that visceral visual reminder that if we had been killed, there would have been no justice in this system for us. I mean, what Kyle Rittenhouse did was textbook fascist violence. He was not allowed to be carrying a gun legally, as most of these fascists are not. If you look at Proud Boys and Oath Keepers, a lot of them are felons. They can't legally have weapons, but they're allowed to walk in the street with weapons, and the police do nothing. And just like you said, if you stand against white supremacy, even if you're white, you're a race traitor. There will be no justice for you in this system. And it is just incredibly upsetting in light of the danger we faced, and, staring reality in the face like that there would have been no justice for us if those dangers had actually taken our lives.
Yeah, it's terrible. The one productive thing out of this is that people are seeing this. What a lot of indigenous, a lot of brown people, a lot of black people have been saying for decades, before social media, before internet. This has been going on, but people are now actually seeing a judge say this just preposterous stuff. Like literally, you're just going by the definition of the word victim when you're calling them a victim. But you notice he didn't say they're not victims. He just said it's a loaded word.
Right.
People give more meaning to it than it does. And they don't do that to looters and rioters, and they've never been convicted. They're dead.
Right.
They've never been convicted. Looters, rioters. I can't remember the other one they said, but it's just
Arsonist.
Arsonist, yeah. Like he's reading it as he's the defense attorney. And he's the judge.
Right. The projection was just amazing.
Yes, just preposterous. So, well, let's bring in. Go ahead.
I just wanted to say, I hope you're right. There are those moments where the absence of justice really strikes home in America. Like the trial of the Chicago 8, I think, was a good example of just such a ridiculous miscarriage of justice. And if anything good can come out of this, I hope it's something like that.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. I don't like to use the word silver lining. That's why I tried to use a different word, like the positive that comes out of this, and that's why I was saying that. But let's go to the last two to get your opinions. We'll go to Luden and then in with Novi. Luden, what did you think? Like your first reaction? If this was the first time you saw the video, or even earlier, if you can think back to like what was your gut reaction to all of this and what's going on with this case?
So I'd actually seen the quote earlier on Twitter, but when you played it, that was actually the first time that I saw the judge actually speak the words. And it baffled me because the actual meaning of the word victim is a person who was harmed, injured, or killed as a result of a crime, accident, or event or action. So he's warping the actual definition of the word and trying to soften it to defend Kyle Rittenhouse. But again, that's not his job. His job is to basically weigh whether the person is guilty or innocent. He's not the defense. And it's just like deja vu all over again, where all these like school shooters or other people who like are white and they are being overseen by white judges, and the judges basically give them a free pass or a slap on the wrist.
Yeah, it's almost like shouldn't ruin his life over this. He just killed two people that were in solidarity with people of color. Like, come on, guys. It almost feels like that's what this whole thing is feeling like. Like people. I keep saying people. Let me just show you one of the tweets. This is in support. I think this is in. Yeah, I may have deleted. Oh no, I know what it is. So what I did was I just searched Kyle Rittenhouse, yeah, and I just trying to come up with the judge video, and stumbled across this other video, the same video, but just other takes. I'm not gonna put this guy's cussing and stuff on this one, so I'll show this one right here. I don't want too much craziness on here, but it's astonishing to me that people support, like, what they're saying is so preposterous. What they're saying. Let's see if this is it here. Yeah. Like this guy here, I don't know who he is. Maybe he's some sort of conservative person. There's an American flag there. That's usually a good indication that he is. Oh, here it goes. Senior former Navy China analyst. That all tells me he's pretty conservative. Prosecutor just screwed up and admitted the mob member who was shot started the fight. This case is not going well.
Which mob member was he talking about? The one with the skateboard?
Right. I was like, is that who he meant?
Yeah.
The guy's name was Anthony Huber. Armed and dangerous with his skateboard. Is that which mob member he's talking about?
Right. If you notice with conservatives, I'm sure all of you noticed this, with conservative media, it's all in messaging. They find a word and they keep using it until it becomes part of the conversation. Even the other side begins to use it. And in this case, like in this say, they're a mob. The mob can't be good. You get what I'm saying? It's the same way they use the word terrorist. You just say terrorist, that means you can bomb the entire country. They're terrorists over there. You can bomb the entire country, and Americans will be like, well, there's terrorists. Messaging. Part of propaganda.
That's exactly what they're not trying to do with victim. It's the opposite of the same exact thing, just on that other end.
Exactly. That is absolutely right. And so let's go to Novi. What is your reaction to all of what? Does anybody know what state this is in? Kenosha is in
Wisconsin.
Okay. I just wanted to. Okay, I wanted to make sure it wasn't Louisiana, because a lot of things for some reason happen in Louisiana every time we go to Novi, like the whole hurricanes and a bunch of blackouts. We had to go to Novi because it's happening in her state. So Novi, but what is your so I needed to make sure. So Novi, what's your response to the video, to what's happening in the case, to not being able to call victims? And the thing is, you heard the definition. It can be by accident. It doesn't have to be a victim by malice. You being injured can be by accident. I'm a victim. So this judge is saying they can't even be called victims, even if it's by accident. Even if their killing is by accident, victim is too good for these people. So Novi, what is your thoughts on all of this, Novi?
So I've never been to Wisconsin, but I have some friends that I know through school, fellow researchers and stuff that were there protesting. So I got to see it firsthand, and I was involved in the protests here in Louisiana, the George Floyd protest. I didn't march because I'm compromised, and I have a cane. I wouldn't exactly be your first choice to walk a long distance, but I would monitor the police scanners and help get together kids if they did pepper spray or things like that, to help fix that. And the bastard's gonna get off. He's just gonna get off. And I don't mean to sound pessimistic about this. It's just going to happen. Somebody said in the comments the only reason why Chauvin got convicted was because of public pressure. And you're exactly right. And unfortunately, Rittenhouse, they get the advantage of the poor messaging saying that the protesters are now some sort of mob, which they weren't. And then Rittenhouse, who you have this young, pretty boy who was just playing games and didn't know what he was doing. And he was being oh so nice when he complimented the cops. And he probably was where those mean leftist bullies started the fight. So, yeah, and it's just so sad and pathetic and irritating because these deaths are going to go unavenged. And it's all too common. And who thought that he would actually get convicted? I certainly didn't. And not because I don't think that he should be, but because, unfortunately, you see how the system works. Especially if you are a person of color, if you're in a minority group, or you are working with them in some capacity, they will come after you just as bad because you are considered to be no better. I know that's for a fact. I get, since I started wearing the hijab, I get more and more strange looks. With people telling me to take it off, and whispering under their breaths. And that's just my little example, but that happens constantly. And I'm not saying that it's not a reason to stick to your guns, but you should. You should keep fighting for what you believe in. You should still keep protesting, not because the justice system is going to save you, but because the justice system needs to be abolished and we need to have something better. And if we don't stop fighting, nothing's going to change. It's just not.
Yeah, and that's why dual power is so important, because all of these corrupt institutions that are failing us, we have to have something replacing them. And so dual power is a topic we will be covering on FHL a lot, because that is important. That we all are saying tear down these organizations. You have to have something or some way of replacing them, and that idea is what kind of dual power is talking about. So thank you for that. So Logan, you came in right at the right time. We were just played the Kyle Rittenhouse video of the judge saying you can't say victims, and the victims are actually can be called rioters. I don't know have you heard that today? Have you heard about the news today, Logan?
I have, yes. The judge said that it is not okay to refer to the people who were killed as victims, but it's completely okay to refer to, to refer to them as looters and rioters and all that.
So the question that we're all at, everybody's being asked and answered is, what was your gut reaction? Like we played the actual video, and like when you first heard this, like initially I thought it was a meme because it was a picture I saw. It wasn't a video. And I'm like, yeah, right. And I'm like, no, this is serious. That you can't call victims. I thought it was a meme because it sounds so silly that you can't call victims victims.
Right.
Yeah. So what was your gut initial reaction to this, and what does it say more broadly about the justice system?
Absolutely. Okay. My initial reaction was, of course, just anger and like almost nausea, because it's just so manifestly wrong, right? It's just wrong. But then my second reaction, which was, I guess the more accurate reaction and like the less reactionary reaction, was, we talk about white supremacy all day long. We talk about a system that was never intended for us. And, we talk about that, but we don't acknowledge like that this is what that means, right? Like they love people like Kyle Rittenhouse. They love them. They love people like Brock Turner. They love them because
Yes.
What do they need? They need stormtroopers. They need people who are willing to do the absolute worst, right? People who don't have a conscience, right? People that they buy the lie of white supremacy, of capitalism, of all the lies that govern it, right? And they think that they have some place in it, and they're willing to just step in and do what must be done in terms of the system, right? So to me, what this does is it underlines, right, that like all the systems that we're looking to for any semblance of justice, of course they're not going to give us any justice, right? And we do a lot of like playing around, like, oh well, if we do this and within the system we can do it. And even those of us who are leftists, right, those of us who don't still believe completely in electoral politics, we're like, well, if we start a new party, maybe that'll do it. That's not going to do it either. The system's rotten because they want people like Kyle Rittenhouse there. They want them to go to the next state with an illegal weapon and kill people who are standing up for justice. They want that. And they're going to keep having it as long as basically, we don't stop them. And we just have to be basically what it did for me is it doubled down on my understanding that this system will not and cannot and never, ever will give the people what they need to have a just and free and safe life. So it's just up to us. We shouldn't, people like to say like, oh, I'm not surprised. And like, you should be a little surprised by this, right? Because like, that's egregious to hear that out loud, to hear them actually say it. And you shouldn't divorce yourself from the revulsion that it engenders within you, right? It's like, you should feel those feelings, and those feelings, rather than letting them metastasize into anger or into nihilism, like the saying says, let this radicalize you rather than lead you into despair.
Yes. Take that anger, that disgust, that frustration, and use that energy and channel it. That is something that just in the last year I am, trying to get better at doing, because it's a way more constructive and positive and effective. So absolutely. So let's go to the next question I had about this. So we all kind of gave our initial reaction about the video. I'm sorry, about this ruling, about using the use of the term victim. To me, it kind of solidifies, or I'll use the term that Logan used, doubles down on the fact that the police state stems from the overseer state of slaves, and it has not strayed, or it will not stray too far from its original purpose. It's not going to do that. You get what I'm saying? It is just not. We're trying to pretty up the police state when it's not pretty. This is why no station, no channel will put on a show that says only positive things about the police. You have to nice up the overseers when you come from the overseer, when you come from that. You get what I mean? It's hard to do that because it's so part of your DNA to be this. It's so part, like, what? A police officer not brutalize people of color? What are they doing then? You know what I mean? Like, that's the reaction that of white America, is that, what is their purpose? Because literally, they don't need to go to rich neighborhoods. There's not a lot of crime there. So it doesn't make sense that if so many white people are for the police when the police don't do nothing in their neighborhoods. To me, that's how I look at it. And it was a discussion I had with Nick. He was bringing up that point. It was like, all of you should want to defund the police because you're spending money and you're not getting nothing from it. But anyway, go ahead.
Sorry. Go ahead, Bubble.
I just wanted to jump in. I think you're totally right, but also, there is a lot of crime there.
Yes.
White people do drugs at the same rate or a greater rate than anyone else. The second that police start turning their attention on white people, they cry foul. You know, if there were frat houses getting drug busted every week, and we see it with the mask stuff, right? People get trespassed and they throw a fit because police are for non-white people. Police are not meant to police the white people. Right.
That's why that is such a good point. And I was just flashing back just to personal experiences and so yeah. So yeah, let's go. Who was the last person? Actually, I was just talking. I haven't even asked you the second. I haven't even asked you the second question. So what I was getting to is that it's talking about. It illustrates the bigger picture that the police state, you know, comes from the slave catcher state, and or that I mean, there's two sort of beginnings of police in America, but America chose to go with the southern version of that, which was the overseer version, and you know, which we have today. So my question to the panel is, can this, how can I phrase this? Can this case open up the eyes of some white people about the system? Whose eyes need to be open? So I'm not saying about racist people or something like that. I'm saying just your average white person who, like, either way, like, you know, I'm not racist. I don't think people should be racist, but I'm not really in the fight for anything. I'm not doing anything. Like, can something like this, where we say this is so blatant, can something like this get that type of white person to say, this is just too much? You get what I'm saying? Basically radicalized. I guess that's the question I'm asking. If any of you have been that person, or any of you know a person that, you know, you may have a white friend and say, hey, yeah, you know, he's not racist. He or she may not be racist, or that person may not be racist, but they're not, you know, going to go out and protest anything for that person. So keep that person in mind. Do you think this case can radicalize that person if this case goes the way we all believe it's going to go, which is this guy getting off? So that's a question. Who wants to take it first? Go ahead, Novi. You have the floor.
It radicalized me. I grew up in a rural town in Texas, and there is a scandal involving the judges giving disproportionate sentencing time to white versus black children. Like, for the same crime of truancy, a white kid would have gotten maybe 10 days or something, whereas the black girl in question got 14 months. I was 12 at the time. My parents were activists, but they're Democrats. They're kind of like in the style of Obama, Clinton, you know, about where you'd think, you know, left for Texas, but still.
Right.
And nothing happened. Like, we ended up having this protest, and it came up to the point where there was a July 4th parade where you had Black Panthers on one side and the Ku Klux Klan on the other. And they were doing it like we were talked about in the national news. You can find it if you looked up the name of my hometown on the Wikipedia page. It's shown like this controversy. So it was a really, really big deal. And I was friends with the black student's younger sister. So I actually knew like a little bit of her because we had a couple classes together, and we talked. And it was more than just that. It was seeing the adults and seeing something that was so blatantly wrong change, because we knew that things were wrong at the school. Like, you would get judged more if you were wearing different your clothing was different, grading, everything like that, and all this stuff came to the forefront, and then nothing changed. Like it was just this big deal, and just nothing happened. And I realized that being like my parents wasn't good enough, that I had to try to do more. So I started learning. I tried to do other things. And then by the time I was 13 or 14, I was trying to get money out of politics and going to protests. So,
And it all started from that. It all started from that when you were 12 years old, and it just continued to radicalize you.
We managed to get the case retried, and her sentence was reduced significantly, like back to where it should have been. Like the case was dismissed, but nothing really changed apart from that. And I think that it definitely can. And in places where it can, it's not going to be in places where people have got to be able to find the information. And if they can relate to it some way, if they had a similar experience, or even that, they can find the humanity in the victims and see the horror in what's going on, yeah, they could become radicalized. But with the way the judge is speaking this language, unless they know what happened, I'm not sure whether it'll have the same effect.
It'll have the same effect. That is true. Now, the reason I'm curious about this question is because in order to break down a system like this, we need more white people to see what's happening. So I'm wondering, do events like this radicalize, because events like this are not going to radicalize if you're real racist, because you're going to be like, yeah. So I'm not saying that white person. I'm saying just a normal not normal, but a white person who's not racist and, fine, but they're just not advocates. They're not going out and I'm saying for a person like that, a person who still believes that the justice system does good and they're, you know what I mean? Like that 99% of cops are good and they're bad apples. That person is what I'm saying. Do you think something like this would radicalize them? I'm going to bring in Logan and then I'm going to go to Michelle. So do you think an event like this, Logan, I'm not going to use the word should, because I think the word should would mean, yeah, it should. But do you think this event will radicalize a good number of white folks?
So, obviously pure speculation, but I think yes, there will be some, there are all the different dominoes that are falling right now. The fact that they're all falling at once is kind of great because everyone has an issue that hits them in the heart. You know what I mean? So this is one where it's like, look, we saw on camera him shoot people, right? Like indisputable, right? And another one of the things is just like the like semantic and weird lawyer language of it all. Like that's going to definitely set some people off because it's like, what do you mean they're not victims? That's just literally not accurate. That's not accurate, right? So we can definitely get some of the the more debate bro inclined tips to get active about it. But I will say that a lot of it depends on how we react to it, right? Like if we basically keep heightening the contradictions, as the saying goes, right? If we make sure to put it in people's face how just messed up it is and not just leave it at that, but that's messed up and that's how it is and has always been, then we can at least help, process happen.
I think that is a great point. And also because why I asked this question, and it is purely hypothetical, is because I believe that the George Floyd incident, for example, I mean, that was worldwide. So it opened the eyes of police brutality to a lot of white people.
Yeah.
Worldwide. So, and I'm wondering, now this is not a worldwide case because I don't necessarily know if it's being covered like that, but So yeah, so I, I'm just wondering if in this situation would it be the same? So who was I going to? I can't remember. Oh, Michelle. So Michelle, same sort of question. Do you think something like this, an event like this? I don't mean necessarily just the victim thing, but just this person where we all know or believe that he's going to get off because we're seeing the signs, the red flags about it. Do you believe a white person who's not doesn't believe that they're racist can view this and say this this is just completely wrong? Do you think this radicalizes them?
So I think this is a complex situation because there's a lot of variables and it's hidden behind many layers of the language and the structural problems that we have in the United States of the racism, the classic eugenics, the right to bear arms, all of those things. A 17-year-old doesn't have the emotional maturity to actually manage that type of gun. So when you put him in this situation, he'll automatically have those white people that can relate because their son carried a gun or their son did this or their son did that without seeing the flip side. And I think we have to bring the structural issues more and more into this. The judge is saying, don't use victim because how dare you say somebody's a victim of a crime when they were looting and rioting? I mean, or it can kind of follow that line of things, of thinking. So, the judge is doing what judges do. That needs to change. The system needs to break. The system needs to stop being racist. The system needs to stop being what it's built to be. But how do we do that? And this case goes both ways with families and with, the age of Kyle Rittenhouse and that also the right to bear arms, because you've got all kinds of people that want to support the right for him to carry that weapon. And I think it's a very, what I call frequently is mud wrestling. It's like a mud wrestling of all of these different issues. So does it have the power, say the power that George Floyd's murder had? I don't think so, but I will say there's also some parallels that some people can see, and that may push them a little bit further onto that anti-racism spectrum, and realizing and understanding the structural flaws in our system. Our criminal justice system will never work the way it's created because we can't get equity in representation on the juries. We can't get all of those variables in place because the system prevents that from happening, because the system wants to not see the inequities that exist in our society that are baked into our society from the very beginning. So how do we unbake those things? And each of these things is what I call a ripple in a pond, as you start the change. Because I've been asked over and over, how can I keep doing the activism I do without getting burnt out, without getting tired, without getting frustrated? And it's a lot of what I've had to do is let go of the outcome. I always stay focused on improving things, but I have to know that my actions or what happened were enough by that drop in the pond. This news story, and a whole nother angle that I've said already too, is the media coverage of it can make or break the situation. Media historically has used language as a way of undermining power or amplifying the power, enhancing the power that people have. And this is very much, the judge is doing something very similar. So it's technically accepted in all of our freaking media classes that people go to school to study journalism, to do this stuff, that they're told how to frame these things. And they're told to frame them in a way that, like with rapes and murders and things like that, you put the victim as the power holder in that sentence. You make it more about the victim than about what the crime was done. So can we do that in this situation? Because that would be what might radicalize, if we can actually look at Kyle Rittenhouse's crime and only his crime with all those other variables kind of peeled away. But that's not realistic in the society we live in and in the structures that we do. So how can we bring the messaging, get better at the messaging, to point out the flaws in the mainstream media messaging, the flaws in the judge's messaging of, you must not refer to these people as victims, but you can refer to them as these other crimes that are more, palatable to him apparently, or something. I don't know. So it's a complex situation. If we get one or two people, is that enough? That's another question to throw back. At what point is it enough? When do we reach that marker of enough? And I think with George Floyd, we saw a beginning of this, because especially like locally, for me, and I'm in San Jose, so we were one of the most broadcasted first kind of protests that had, because the police response was so brutal to everything that was being, and they were basing all of their stuff on the framing of the media, the framing of the terrorism channels saying terrorists were going to come occupy San Jose. So how do we hold all of these systems accountable, when we can't get the framing out of the door either? It's like we can't get the message beyond the group of us that are more progressive in that sense, that kind of understand that this is part of a structural issue and a structural problem. So.
Well, I think those barriers that are baked into the structure are there to impede us from freeing up things or making things more equitable. They're put there in place for that purpose. Like, for example, like this judge. I mean, he's a judge. Like, he's a judge telling people you can't call people victims. I don't understand how somebody has not like won an appeal just of them saying stuff like that. You can't, like, you're telling somebody you can't call them a victim, even if it's self-defense. The person is a victim of you killing them.
Mm-hmm. But
you can't do that because you can't give any sort of compassion, because he believes compassion comes with the word victim, and you can't have compassion for Black people or anybody in solidarity with Black people or people of color and indigenous people. It goes back to the white supremacy part of this. So let's go ahead and go to Abby, and then we'll go to Ben. But I'm going to flip or change the question a little bit to so Abby, the question now is, there's a lot of events that should radicalize white people into understanding what's really happening with the police state. Mm-hmm. So what I'm asking is, do you think, or should this be one of those events that does that? And why do you believe that? Like, what about the case should a person see, or a white person see, that show that? So should it be? And then why do you think so?
I think it should. I would just like, if I had to tell, white people about this, I'd be like, okay, so this started because a white cop shot an unarmed Black man in the back a few times, paralyzing him. So it's just like, it's the old playbook, like what radicalized me, like on this specific issue personally, was when they murdered Tamir Rice, like a child. Like I still can't even, like a child. They didn't care, and that's what I would bring up. I'd be like, this is how this all got started. And the reason that people were out here protesting is because they are tired of this. This keeps happening. Here are some examples. And it's just, it keeps happening, that's why. And I would also like to kind of piggyback on what Michelle said. I'd be like, this judge is like doing the same thing that the media does. Like, he's using like coded language to manufacture consent for like a specific viewpoint. Mm-hmm. So, these people are out here protesting for justice, and there are people who are murdered for it, but we have to demonize them by calling them rioters, looters, arsonists, terrorists, like, and also another common one they like to use, thug, right. It's just like, this is what they do, and this judge is doing the exact same thing. Like, there's no difference. And it's just, I would hope that it would, because I'm thinking, what I mean, if you don't get radicalized by a black child being murdered by the police, if by Jacob Blake, like his
There's
life
always
will
a
never be the
reason.
same.
In our society, in our white
Mhm.
supremacy society, there's always a reason. The rioters, they're looters. Jacob Blake, he had a gun underneath a match in his car 3 feet away. Like, you know what I mean? That's the reason. He could have got to
Yeah.
that. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
any reason. It could be anything.
Mhm.
Oh, he had a water gun in his hand. That's why he was shot. What?
Yep.
Like it doesn't matter. If there's a reason,
Mhm.
he could get off.
Yeah.
If there's a reason. I mean, look at Breonna Taylor's.
Oh God.
Like,
Like,
is there a reason for oh, it was the wrong place. So our bad. Sorry.
right. Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. It is no value given to lives of people. It's just no value at all. And to race traders.
Yeah.
In this case, what I'm speaking of. So let's go to Ben. We're going to go to. Is it time already? Oh, talking about my wife. Sorry. So let's go to Ben. So the question is kind of morphed, but essentially what I'm asking is.
I hope I
Yeah,
answered
this is the
that, by the
question.
way. I was like, did I
No,
answer
no.
that?
No, you did, but I feel like the question still isn't quite right. So I'm trying to get the question right. I'm basically asking, if this doesn't radicalize white people, what will radicalize white people? That's what I'm asking. Because I'm saying, like, this should, and I'm asking you, shouldn't this? But the real question I'm trying to find out is, if this doesn't, what does? So yeah, so that's more of, what is your comment on that comment? And let's do that instead of asking a particular question. So Ben, what is your comment on all of this? What I'm saying about, I'm saying that in order for more change to happen, the next level of change to happen, we need more white people to see what we're seeing.
Yeah.
So I'm saying, how do we do that if this is not one of those events? How do we do that? Go ahead.
Well, I liked both of your questions, and I'd like to try to answer both of them.
Sure.
Unfortunately, I think they're separate, because as an absurd miscarriage of justice as this trial has been so far, with the judge, what he said about not being allowed to call them victims, I think this country is so divided. I mean, I was just browsing through the comments, and so many people just have this narrative to where no matter what's in front of their face, they will take that hateful right-wing narrative. People don't know the facts anymore, and to an extent, the facts don't matter. I saw people saying, well, Rittenhouse didn't shoot anyone until he was knocked down on his back. That is really that's ridiculous. He shot the first guy. That's why they were chasing him. He absolutely went there to take part in fascist violence. He brought a gun. Nobody invited him. He tried to lie and say the property owner asked him to be there. That was a lie. He went out there to hurt the enemy. And I mean, I had a moment to where I had to actually go to San Francisco and see what was going on in the Bay Area to realize, hey, these right-wing thugs are actually the ones trying to start fights. It's unclear when you see it online, when you're only hearing, what people are trying to tell you about what's happening on the ground. You don't know because you're not there. You don't see it. And I think too many white people are sucked into that, to where they're just willing to believe all these lies. They're willing to believe Kyle Rittenhouse was a perfect child and he was attacked by a mob for no good reason, and all of these right-wing narratives. So I think it should be a trial of the Chicago 8 miscarriage of justice wake-up call for America, but I'm not really convinced it will be. But to answer the second question, if this won't wake up the white people, what will? I think it'll be the continued decline in this country. I mean, Joe Biden keeps saying build back better. It's not happening. The economy is in shambles. The environment environmental disasters keep getting worse, I think it'll be climate change, it'll be our economy, the collapse of our empire. That, you know, too late, far too late. Not for change, far too late compared to if they would wake up now. But I think those disasters will finally bring them around, wake them up to what's going on.
Absolutely. And let's go to Joy now. And Joy, again, I don't want to, confine you to one question. So you kind of hear the discussion, and we're really just talking about radicalizing more white people in particular, and also talking about the radicalization of white people around this case in particular. So, however you want to take that, whatever angle you want to answer that, Joy, you have the floor.
I think as far as radicalizing white people from this case, I don't consider myself a pessimist. I consider myself a realist, but I don't think it's likely, to be quite honest, and especially of a certain magnitude that it would make a real impact.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the reasons is because I don't think your average person is going to understand that just because the two people who were killed were white, that does not mean that there's serious racism within this entire case. I don't think people as a whole are going to comprehend that. Also, desensitization is a cancer. We witness that every day. Everything is a number, a percentage, and these things, we're so desensitized to so many of egregious things that happen all the time. And I think also, that also plays into it. What can radicalize white people? I'll tell you what can. Show Kyle Rittenhouse saying he supports January 6th last year.
Mm-hmm.
Show he supports Trump. White people will be in the street like that because that's how our society is. Trump is the one to blame. I mean, he's a piece of shit. I'm not
right.
But this is how so many white people are. You bring Trump into the mix, they will be in those streets.
Is he a Trump supporter? Is he a Trump supporter? Is he a Trump supporter?
I don't know. I don't know. I did search for it. I haven't found anything, but I'm legit ready to post screenshots or something if that's what will get people in the street. Right? It's sad that you should have to do that, honestly. But that's what riles people up. I mean, we see it. We're still talking about January 6th every freaking day, even though we're watching the poor in front of our face.
Right.
But then also you have I'm legit waiting for the judge to offer to buy Burger King for Kyle Rittenhouse.
Yes.
This shit keeps happening. And yes, George Floyd, my God, did that change so many people's perception on things. But they're not in the streets anymore. So
what changed?
That's the thing. It's okay, so there is a verdict. We all leave the streets. Now what? Mm-hmm. So I think it's really it's a several pronged approach. So it's how do we get them radicalized? B, how do we keep them radicalized? Mm-hmm. And C, how do we educate them to the point that they know how to watch out for things that they have been oblivious to in the past.
Well, I think all of the panelists here, in particular, our white comrades here. I think what you do, and I'm going to assume, because I feel the passion from all of you, so I'm going to assume you do this. I think you radicalizing other white people is how it's going to happen. It's you talking, having just conversations with friends of friends, neighbors, that type of thing, co-workers, because they'll take the message from another white person who's friendly to them and hear you. You get what I'm saying? Instead of hey, you know what I mean? They'll hear you saying, hey, to my friend Joy, she's saying, yeah, I need to just look at this a different way. Like, and Joy is cool, so maybe I should. Like, that's to me gonna be how we do how we accomplish that. I felt like Michelle, were you gonna say something, Michelle?
Yeah. The main thing with all of this, though, too, is that connection builds different understandings. You know, there's a bridging that happens when you put two people that share any trait together. It could be, you know, and this is kind of taught in quote unquote diversity circles, and it can be co-opted, but you know, when you have a connection, a personal connection with another person, that's when they believe you and they'll listen to you. That's the things that have changed me over time, is my friends, my, you know, learning something, being directly affected by something that was new or, you know, unexpected, or just, you know, a new layer of crap in our society. But so that connection is a key variable in all of this. And if we forget that connection is the variable, then we end up just reinventing things. You know, hate stirs hate. Connection and building and bridging is where we really can make a difference.
Were you gonna say something, Abby? It felt like you were
I agree. Like, I usually like want to start with my family when I have those kind of conversations, because like Michelle said, like the connection is there because I have a good relationship with my family. So, and you know, and it's like also when it's like people I work with who I respect, there's also that, so that you know, and I know they respect me and the connection is there.
Right.
So like I agree with her. That's such a good point.
Absolutely. And let's go to go ahead, Logan, before we go to Luden for his take on everything. Go ahead, Logan.
Another thing I think to do would be there's like class reductionists, there's a lot of them, and reconnecting race to economics at every opportunity, I think is a great idea, because like it really, like, you know, it's not that class reductionists are wrong, like logically, it's just that like it's all tied together in ways you can't separate them, right? So you can't separate race from class. So you can't just say, oh, it's all about class and race doesn't matter. No, like it is all about class, and like class is racialized, like by definition, right? So whatever you allow to happen to Black people is going to happen to you, because you are technically in the same class despite having a different racial identity, right? So like, just, I mean, I think making those connections is also important, because, you know, people care about their fucking pocketbooks.
What I always say, Logan, is that, and when I said this the first time, a lot of people, my white comrades, were like, they didn't know. Like, Black people view class and race as one and the same. It's one and the same.
Yeah.
When I say Black people, I'm talking the majority that I've had conversations with. It's one and the same, and I always say it this way: race, which is a made up thing, race is just the name of our class. You understand? So Black is just the name. It's just the label of our poor class. The label of your poor class is rural whites. You get what I'm saying? So Black is just our category for our class. That is just the name of our category. So that's a better way, I think, of looking at it. Luden. Last but not least, Luden, we want to get your thoughts on all of this. How do we radicalize our white comrades or white people in general? What are your thoughts on just the conversation of opening up more white people's eyes? And in your own life, do you have any stories of radicalizing some of your white friends, or hearing stories of your white friends radicalizing other people?
Right, this is a loaded one. All right, so as far as radicalizing other white people, I think one way that will be key is to like film police brutality or police injustice being perpetuated against white working class people, because I live in New York, and a couple of days ago there was an instance where a light-skinned person who was filming a police officer in the subway doing absolutely nothing, and then the police officer got upset and just pushed him out of the subway for, again, no reason.
No reason.
And there was some uproar about that. But I think like if we film situations like that and expressed that we are in the same boat,
right?
Because as you said, we're in the same class, so like we're in the same boat. I think that would help get the message across a lot better.
Absolutely.
As far as friends that have been radicalized, I don't know. No real examples come to mind because I don't really have that many white friends, and the few that I have are living in a different country, so it's kind of like hard to.
Where are you at in New York? You're in New York, New York?
Yeah, Brooklyn.
Okay, right on. Is Brooklyn being gentrified right now?
Oh yeah. My neighborhood compared to how it was about 20 years ago, different.
Completely different. Yeah.
Yeah, like wherever you used to have like a lot of there are some cases where it's good. For example, there's like empty lots that got turned into like housing and whatnot. But there are sections that like are next to hospitals that got turned into one of those outdoor courtyards. So where there used to be direct routes to a hospital got cut off. So now there's like people have to go around to get to the hospital. It's crazy.
Yeah. I was speaking with Margaret Kimberly. She's I think the senior columnist at the Black Agenda Report, and yeah, she lives in Brooklyn and works in Manhattan, or works I forget where else she said. And she was like, yeah, it's just like, she's like, I've lived here all of my life and I've never seen it change this quickly like this. And she was telling me like, people don't understand gentrification is about displacing people. It's not about more people coming in, and we don't care if more white people come in but you're displacing the people that were there.
Yeah.
So that's what people don't get about that. Yeah.
And changing the local culture.
Right. Which is very key to a lot of, it could be key to a lot of white cultures too, but I know it's key to people of color. Only because, that's my experience. I can't speak to somebody else's experience. So, but we have come to an end. I don't want to answer another question because I know it's going to probably go on longer than trying to keep it at 90 minutes today. So what I want to do now is just give everyone an opportunity to kind of give their last thoughts on the topic, and then tell us about what you have going on. So if you have a podcast, or if you have an event, or if you're with an organization you want to kind of give a shout out to, or a mutual aid group or something like that, you can also toss that in. So we'll go around the panel, give your last thoughts if you have any. If you don't have any on the topic, then just shout out what you want to. Well, I'll just start from the top, and I'll go Luden, and then I'll go Abby, and then Ben. So Luden, any final thoughts on the topic, Kyle Rittenhouse? Just everything that's all the updates that's happened, and then tell us what you got going on.
Well, a final thought. Hopefully, they either go for a mistrial or Rittenhouse gets some kind of sentence. We all know he's probably not gonna get like the hard sentence he's supposed to get, but something is better than nothing. But yeah, aside from that, let's see. On Saturdays, we have a podcast, Professional Lapses. I'm co-host with Novi and Austin, who's the third co-host. You can catch us on YouTube at 11 p.m. Eastern.
Awesome. Thank you. And Abby, same thing. You can comment if you have any comments, any final comments on the topic, and then tell us what you have going on.
So tomorrow evening, 7 p.m. Eastern time, we have episode 2 of Politics of Justice. It's Sol and I. We are going to be talking about Squid Game and how it is an allegory for capitalism. So we are excited for that. So please tune in if you can.
Absolutely. I still have to see. Now, before it was all this commotion to Squid Games, I saw it on Netflix. I'm like, this looks kind of weird. Like, it has a little preview. I'm like, this looks kind of weird. And then, like, literally 2 days later, everybody's Squid Game. So I still have to watch it. I haven't tried, checked it out. But yeah, All right. So Ben, if you have any final comments on the topic, sir, or what do you have coming up?
Yeah, absolutely. I was just thinking a lot about what you were saying about black being a class in America. And I think that's so true. It's hard for a lot of, especially white Americans, to understand without leaving the country. One really great conversation I had overseas is, if you talk to Europeans, they're like, well, we have Gopniks, Chavs, there are Bogans in Australia. These are all names for the underclass. That's a white coded term. It's like, well, what do you have in America? And the American guy says, probably just racial slurs. That's probably what those classes are in America, what those terms are in America. But in terms of radicalizing white people, the place I'm in right now is that most of the right is too far gone with just a total disregard of facts. My attention is more on existing progressives. I think a lot about the fact that Bernie Sanders had 1 million volunteers.
Yep.
If 1 million people were organized leftists, we could build a city. We could build a port. We could feed everybody, house everybody. So those people that are already close to being activated, that's where my attention is. I'm very excited for the Squid Game conversation. I'll be there offering some Korean perspective.
Yeah.
I have a show upcoming at some point called Locked in Leftist, where we talk about arms training and the history of the arm left.
Absolutely, can't wait to see that that particular episode. Let's go back to the top here. So Novi, Joy, Logan, and then we'll end with Michelle. So Novi, any final thoughts or what do you have coming up?
I think the only way we could radicalize people at this point is if it hits home to them in some way or another. And unfortunately for a lot of people, it's too far gone. So for me personally, I am co-host with Luden and Austin on Professional Lapses, which is Sundays at 11 p.m. Eastern. We talk about international affairs and how it relates back to us, and looking at the good and bad side of internationalism. I'm also on the Revolutionary Reader with Z and Fleece on at 9 Eastern on Thursdays. And when I'm not doing that with PVN, I am a researcher and working on some stuff and trying to get some things accomplished. We're also working here in Louisiana on mutual aid, and because the storms are only getting worse, y'all, and a lot of people don't have the wherewithal to move to higher ground. So we have to do something to help out. So when I'm helping to try to get various organizations to work together and trying to get that accomplished, including several mosques and churches. So when I have more information on that, I can share links.
Okay. Awesome work. Thank you, Novi. And Savage Joy, what are your final thoughts, if you have any? If not, what do you have coming up?
So I think final thought would really just be, I really hope people in our country get more of an interest in the injustice system as a whole. I don't think people talk about it enough. I think that people talk about particular cases when it's trending, things like that. But I think we all need to take more of an interest in the injustice system as a whole. I interviewed a gentleman by the name Temujin Kensu in prison. From prison. He's been there over 32 years for a crime he was proven he did not commit. And he still sits there now. Sandra Bland would still be alive if she had $200 to get out with bail. We watched, Rodney Reed get executed unjustly. We see these things all the time, and we talk about cops being, garbage and stuff, and yes, but we also need to focus on the injustice system and how things then play out from that point on. I think a lot of people are still very uneducated when it comes to how rulings work and how cases are, everything from different kinds of cases, things like that. It's really good to have that knowledge. But anyway, as far as what's coming up, if you guys want to see a clip of a comedy show I just did Sunday, you can see that on my Twitter. I did a book signing with my Shitlib parody book co-writer, Pat the Burner, and also did comedy for the first ever time and last ever time. And it went really well, honestly, but I opened for Rick Overton, Steph, and Jimmy Dore. So it was kind of a tall order.
Dude.
What's that?
Oh, I was like, oh my God, that's so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were great. It was pretty amazing. Kind of surreal. So if you guys want to check that out, it's on my Twitter page. Also, you can get my Shitlib parody book at savageandpat.com. As far as my show, Savage joined the Unruly Hour tomorrow night. I have journalist Ilias Cepeda, who is fantastic. He will be co-hosting with me, and we will be welcoming David McBride, who is in Australia, and he is facing 5 years in federal prison for being a whistleblower for information on Afghanistan. I did a show with him on Assange. So we're going to be talking tomorrow night about the injustices of punishing people for free speech. So that's what's coming up directly tomorrow. I also do a postmortem breakdown with the lovely Logan here and Andrew. That's every Monday night at 9:30 p.m. Eastern. And Monday, I know it's November 1st, but we are doing our Halloween special and Ron Placone will be joining us. So bring your costumes. We're going to be in ours, and it's going to be a really fun show.
I can't wait to see what everybody's costume is on that episode. That should be very interesting. Somehow, every party I go to, somebody always comes as Trump for some reason. Every time
oh God, I hope not.
I go, but I do want to thank everybody on the panel. It's really been a very, very interesting discussion about this, and Kyle really was just, the spark for to have the discussion about just, white privilege and criminal justice system. Really. So thanks again for everybody that joined. Make sure you check out everybody's show, like and subscribe to this channel. Thank you, and signing off. See you next week. Oh, actually, next week we will be on PVN, or the Populist Voice Network. So we'll be here this week. Next week we're on PVN. So see you on PVN next week.
Subscribe.
Woo!